Muhammad Alíy-i-Iṣfahání. Muhammad Ali of Isfahan was among the earliest of believers guided to the faith from its very beginning. He was one of the mystics. His house was a gathering place for them and the philosophers. Noble, high-minded, he was one of Isfahan's most respected citizens, and served as a host and sanctuary for every stranger, rich or poor. He had verve, an excellent disposition, was forbearing, affable, generous, a boon companion, and it was known throughout the city that he enjoyed a good time. Then he was led to embrace the faith and caught fire from the semiotic tree. His house became a teaching center, dedicated to the glory of God. Day and night the believers flocked there as to a lamp lit by heavenly love. Over a long period the sacred verses were chanted in that house, and the clear proofs set forth. Although this was widely known, Muhammad Ali was not molested, because he was a kinsman of the Imam Jumieh of Isfahan. Finally, however, things came to such a pass that the Imam Jumieh himself sent him away, telling him, "I can protect you no longer. You're in grave danger. The best thing for you is to leave here and go on a journey." He left his home then and went to Iraq and entered the presence of the world's desired one. He spent some time there, progressing every day. He had little to live on, but was happy and content. A man of excellent disposition, he was congenial to believers and others alike. When Baha'u'llah and his retinue left Baghdad for Constantinople, Muhammad Ali was in his company and continued on with him to the land of mystery, Adrianople. Not one to be inconstant, he maintained his characteristic immutability of heart. Whatever happened, he remained the same. In Adrianople as well, his days passed happily under the protection of Baha'u'llah. He would carry on some business which, however trifling, would bring in surprisingly abundant returns. From Adrianople, Muhammad Ali accompanied Baha'u'llah to the fortress of Acre, was put in jail there, and was numbered among Baha'u'llah's fellow captives for the rest of his life, achieving that greatest of all distinctions, to be in prison with the Blessed Beauty. He spent his days in utter bliss. Here, too, he carried on a small business, which occupied him from morning till noon. In the afternoons he would take his samovar, wrap it in a dark-colored pouch made from a saddle-bag, and go off somewhere to a garden or meadow or out in a field, and have his tea. Sometimes he would be found in the farm of Mazrai, or again in the Rizwan garden, or at the mansion. He would have the honor of attending upon Baha'u'llah. Muhammad Ali would carefully consider every blessing that came his way. Quote, "How delicious my tea is today," unquote, he would comment. "What perfume, what color, how lovely this meadow is, and the flowers so bright." He used to say that everything, even air and water, had its own special fragrance. For him the days passed in indescribable delight. Even kings were not so happy as this old man. The people said, "He is completely free of the world." They would declare, "He lives in joy." It also happened that his food was of the very best, and that his home was situated in the very best part of Acre. Gracious God! Here he was, a prisoner, and yet experiencing comfort, peace, and joy. Muhammad Ali was past 80 when he finally departed to eternal light. He had been the recipient of many tablets from Baha'u'llah, and of endless bounty under all conditions. Upon him be the glory of God, the most glorious. Upon him be myriads of heavenly blessings. May God favor him with gladness for ever and ever. His luminous grave is in Acre. Abu Salih, the gardener. Among those who emigrated and were companions in the most great prison was Akha Abdus-Salih. This excellent soul, a child of early believers, came from Isfahan. His noble-hearted father died, and this child grew up an orphan. There was none to rear or care for him, and he was the prey of anyone who chose to do him harm. At last he became adolescent, and older now, sought out his well-beloved. He immigrated to the most great prison, and here, at the Rizwan, achieved the honor of being appointed gardener. At this task he was second to none. In his faith, too, he was staunch, loyal, worthy of trust. As to his character, he was an embodiment of the sacred verse, quote, "Of a noble nature art thou," unquote, from the Quran 68:4. That is how he won the distinction of being gardener at the Rizwan, and of thus receiving the greatest bounty of all. Almost daily he entered the presence of Baha'u'llah. For the most great name was held prisoner and confined 9 years in the fortress town of Akkha, and at all times, both in the barracks and afterward, from without the house, the police and farashas had him under constant guard. The Blessed Beauty lived in a very small house, and he never set foot out that narrow lodging, because his oppressors kept continual watch at the door. When, however, 9 years had elapsed, the fixed and predetermined length of days was over, and at that time, against the rancorous will of the tyrant Abdul-Hamid and all his minions, Baha'u'llah proceeded out of the fortress with authority and might, and in a kingly mansion beyond the city made his home. Although the policy of Sultan Abdul-Hamid was harsher than ever, although he constantly insisted on his captives' strict confinement, still the Blessed Beauty now lived, as everyone knows, with all power and glory. Some of the time Baha'u'llah would spend at the mansion, and again at the farm village of Mazrai. For a while he would sojourn in Haifa, and occasionally his tent would be pitched on the heights of Mount Carmel. Friends from everywhere presented themselves and gained an audience. The people and the government authorities witnessed it all, yet no one so much as breathed a word, and this is one of Baha'u'llah's greatest miracles, that he, a captive, surrounded himself with panoply, and he wielded power. The prison changed into a palace. The jail itself became a Garden of Eden. Such a thing has not occurred in history before. No former age has seen its like, that a man confined to a prison should move about with authority and might, that one in chains should carry the fame of the cause of God to the high heavens, should win splendid victories in both east and west, and should, by his almighty pen, subdue the world. Such is the distinguishing feature of this supreme theophany. One day the government leaders, pillars of the country, the city's ulamas, leading mystics and intellectuals, came out to the mansion. The Blessed Beauty paid them no attention whatever. They were not admitted to his presence, nor did he inquire after any of them. I sat down with them and kept them company for some hours, after which they returned whence they had come. Although the royal Farman specifically decreed that Baha'u'llah was to be held in solitary confinement within the Akkha fortress, in a cell, under perpetual guard, that he was never to set foot outside, that he was never even to see any of the believers, notwithstanding such a farman, such a drastic order, his tent was raised in majesty on the heights of Mount Carmel. What greater display of power could there be than this, that from the very prison the banner of the Lord was raised aloft and rippled out for all the world to see? Praised be the possessor of such majesty and might. Praised be he, weaponed with the power and the glory. Praised be he who defeated his foes when he lay captive in the Akkha prison. To resume, Abdus-Salih lived under a fortunate star, for he regularly came into the presence of Baha'u'llah. He enjoyed the distinction of serving as gardener for many years, and he was at all times loyal, true, and strong in faith. He was humble in the presence of every one of the believers. In all that time he never hurt nor offended anyone, and at the last he left his garden and hastened to the encompassing mercy of God. The ancient beauty was well pleased with Abdus-Salih, and after his ascension revealed a visitation tablet in his honor, also delivering an address concerning him, which was taken down and published together with other scriptures. Upon him be the glory of the All-Glorious. Upon him be God's gentleness and favor in the exalted realm. Ustád Ismá'íl. Yet another from amongst that blessed company was Ustád Ismá'íl, the builder. He was the construction overseer of Farrukh Khan Aminud Dali in Tehran, living happily and prosperously, a man of high standing, well regarded by all. But he lost his heart to the faith and was enraptured by it, till his holy passion consumed every intervening veil. Then he cast caution aside, and became known throughout Tehran as a pillar of the Baha'is. Farrukh Khan ably defended him at first, but as time went on he summoned him and said, "Ustád, you are very dear to me, and I have given you my protection, and have stood by you as best I could. But the Shah has found out about you, and you know what a bloodthirsty tyrant he is. I am afraid that he will seize you without warning, and he will hang you. The best thing for you is to go on a journey. Leave this country, go somewhere else, and escape from this peril." Composed, happy, Ustád gave up his work, closed his eyes to his possessions, and left for Iraq, where he lived in poverty. He had recently taken a bride and loved her beyond measure. Her mother arrived, and by subterfuge obtained his permission to conduct the daughter back to Tehran, supposedly for a visit. As soon as she reached Kirmanshah, she went to the Mujtahid and told him that because her son-in-law had abandoned his religion, her daughter could not remain his lawful wife. The Mujtahid arranged a divorce and wedded the girl to another man. When word of this reached Baghdad, Ismá'íl, steadfast as ever, only laughed. "God be praised," he said. "Nothing is left me on this pathway. I have lost everything, including my bride. I have been able to give him all I possessed." When Baha'u'llah departed from Baghdad and traveled to Rumelia, the friends remained behind. The inhabitants of Baghdad then rose up against those helpless believers, sending them away as captives to Mosul. Ustád was old and feeble, but he left on foot, with no provisions for his journey, crossed over mountains and deserts, valleys and hills, and in the end arrived at the most great prison. At one time Baha'u'llah had written down an ode of Rumi's for him, and had told him to turn his face toward the Bab and sing the words set to a melody. And so, as he wandered through the long dark nights, Ustád would sing these lines, quote, "I am lost, O love, possessed and dazed. Love's fool am I in all the earth. They call me first among the crazed, though I once came first for wit and worth. O love, who sellest me this wine, O love, for whom I burn and bleed, love, for whom I cry and pine, thou the piper, I the reed. If thou wishest me to live, through me blow thy holy breath. The touch of Jesus thou wilt give to me who've lain an age in death. Thou both end and origin, thou without and thou within, from every eye thou hidest well, and yet in every eye dost dwell." Unquote. He was like a bird with broken wings, but he had the song, and it kept him going onward to his one true love. By stealth he approached the fortress and went in, but he was exhausted, spent. He remained for some days, and came into the presence of Baha'u'llah, after which he was directed to look for a lodging in Haifa. He got himself to Haifa, but he found no haven there, no nest or hole, no water, no grain of corn. Finally he made his home in a cave outside the town. He acquired a little tray, and on this he set out rings of earthenware, and some thimbles, pins, and other trinkets. Every day from morning till noon he peddled these, wandering about. Some days his earnings would amount to 20 paras, some days 30, and 40 on his best days. Then he would go home to the cave and content himself with a piece of bread. He was always voicing his thanks, always saying, quote, "Praise be to God that I have attained such favor and grace, that I have been separated from friend and stranger alike, and have taken refuge in this cave. Now I am of those who give their all to buy the divine Joseph in this marketplace. What bounty could be any greater than this?" Unquote. Such was his condition when he died. Many and many a time Baha'u'llah was heard to express his satisfaction with Ustád Ismá'íl. Blessings hemmed him round, and the eye of God was on him. Salutations be unto him, and praise. Upon him be the glory of the All-Glorious. Footnote. This wine, Rumi says elsewhere, comes from the garden of, quote, "Yea, verily," unquote. That is, it symbolizes the primal covenant established between God and man on the day of, quote, "Am I not your Lord?" unquote. On that day the Creator summoned posterity out of the loins of Adam, and said to the generations unborn, quote, "Am I not your Lord?" unquote, whereupon they answered, quote, "Yea, verily, thou art," unquote. From the Quran 7:171. That footnote refers to the second stanza of the poem, which begins, "O love, who sellest me this wine," unquote.